After occupying the Al-Shifa hospital for almost a week, Israel declares that it has found a 55-meter tunnel. They didn't have time to dig anymore, and the concrete will have to dry before the media can be allowed to inspect it. 55 meters isn't much of a tunnel. Do the maths. I'm not sure where that tunnel would take you. It is, of course, a huge hoax. The entire Al-Shifa hospital story, vouched for by Joe Biden, making him jointly and severally responsible for the massacre of the Al-Shifa hospital that will go down in history like the extermination of the Warsaw Ghetto itself. It was a casus belli announced from the beginning. They said that the Hamas leadership was inside the Al-Shifa hospital, though no trace of any of them has been found. They said the armed men were running the hospital, though no armed men existed. Only dead bodies of men, women, and children, doctors, nurses, and technicians. It is a war crime of unimaginable proportions, and yet the Western politicians continued to support it until the last drop of blood was shed on the floor of the wards, of the clinics, of the children's wards of the Al-Shifa hospital. No one will ever forget this crime. No one who supported it will ever be allowed to forget it either. And in any case, they've moved on. Their Sheikh Radwan hospital children's ward, the pediatric ward, was bombed today. Maybe the Hamas leaders in their 55-meter tunnel, still wet, the concrete still glistening. Maybe they escaped to Sheikh Radwan. Maybe they escaped to the Indonesia hospital. Maybe they escaped to the Sheikh Zayed hospital. Why not? They bombed and destroyed virtually every single hospital in the Gaza Strip. In any case, Israel has already announced that the leaders of Hamas are not now in the hospitals. They are in the south of Gaza, in Khan Yunis, the very place that Israel stampeded 1 million people to go and live under the stars as the weather turns filthy, as being safer than being in the north. Well, if the Hamas leaders are now in the south, the same kind of genocidal bombardment visited on the north of the Gaza Strip will now be visited on the south. I want to remind you, because not enough people know this, the Gaza Strip is 25 miles long. It is 3.5 miles wide. There's nowhere to run. There's nowhere to hide. 1 million people are now homeless. Their houses destroyed. 13,000 people dead. 5,500 of them children. Never voted for anybody in their puff. There hasn't been an election in Gaza since 2006, meaning statistically the vast majority of those murdered in this genocidal rampage have never voted for anybody, even if it was acceptable to murder someone because of how they voted. These media outlets still describing this as the Israel-Hamas war are themselves committing a war crime for which Streicher was executed at the Nuremberg Tribunal for his contribution through Der Stürmer, the Nazi filth rag in the encouragement of the Holocaust, which massacred 6 million Jews, millions of others, and led to the Second World War, in which nearly 100 million people died. It's a crime. It is a war crime to encourage genocide, even if only with your pen, even if only with your microphone, even if only on your auto cue. It is a crime. And all these people are jointly culpable for it. Everybody now knows that the Hamas headquarters was not in the Al-Shifa hospital, even imagining that they have a headquarters at all. From the guerrilla videos that I have seen, they're giving the invading Israeli forces a bloody good hiding in the alleyways of Gaza. Why would they need a command and control center anywhere, let alone under a hospital, that the director repeatedly begged the United Nations to come and inspect, to prove the lie that somehow Hamas were underneath this hospital. This is not, of course, the only information crime that has been committed. All those, including some very eminent British and American journalists who purveyed the lie that 50 babies had been beheaded by the Hamas infiltrators into Israel on October 7th, now stand completely shamed forevermore. Only one baby was killed on October the 7th. And who killed that baby is still a moot point, because it is now admitted that which I said at the beginning and was treated to hundreds of threats for doing so. The Israeli armed forces killed a very significant number of the 900 to 1,200 people who died on the 7th of October. I give that range because I'm predicting here now that 900 people died, Israelis, and 300 Palestinians died. That's my best guess on the information we have at this moment. So 900 Israelis, not 1,400 Israelis, not nearly 2,000 Israelis, and not 50 beheaded babies, one dead baby, not beheaded. The Israeli state has accepted that it has no evidence of anybody being raped on October the 7th. The Israeli state, the police no less, have admitted today that Israeli Apache helicopters shelled and rocketed the Trans Music Festival, and conceded that the Hamas and other resistance organizations who invaded on that day their ancient homeland had no idea of any festival going on in the shadow of the suffering and misery of Gaza. All those cars that we were treated to endlessly on our mass media, burned husks with burned people inside them, were turned into burned husks by Apache helicopters flown by Israeli pilots who recklessly as ever simply killed anything that moved or might look like it had moved. The concentration camp breakout on October the 7th was bloody, to be sure. Any concentration camp breakout was bound to be bloody. The people ultimately responsible are the people who kept the keys to the concentration camp decade after decade after decade. The people revolted because they could not breathe. Shifa Hospital was a lie. The beheaded babies was a lie, but some things are indisputably true. One of them is that 60 Palestinian and other national journalists have been systematically murdered in 40 days. 60 in 40 days. Now you may think that dropping 2,000-pound bombs in refugee camps and on schools, 500 died yesterday in a United Nations school. 500, most of them children and women, in a school in an instant were incinerated yesterday. None of them were Hamas. None of them was targeted specifically. It was just a very big bomb dropped on a defenseless school building. You may say that that's why these journalists were killed, but I beg to differ. There's a systematic attempt being made to assassinate every journalist, every photojournalist, everyone responsible for bringing us the images that have changed all of our lives forever. Well, I can only speak for myself. I cannot look at a child now without imagining the children that I've just been looking at, torn limb from limb, their heads excavated of their contents, their limbs literally coming apart at the touch. I am unable to live and function normally now, and maybe forevermore, as a result of what I have seen. So I have another conclusion here. Either the people responsible for Western support for this genocide are not watching these videos, in which case they are miserable, gutless cowards, or they are watching them and pressing on regardless, in which case they are demonic, satanic demons that should not be at large, never mind at large and running our affairs. The Arab states are headed for China. They are going to China first to try and bring about an end to this genocidal madness, which can only end in the consuming of all of us physically and psychologically and economically, can only lead to the overthrow of regimes in the Arab and Muslim world thought by their people to be in any way complicit, even collaborating with this slaughter of the innocent. So the kings and the emirs are scurrying to China first, not Washington, not London, not Paris, but China. And they're right to do so. China must step up to its responsibility as the second greatest power in the world and try to end this helter-skelter, which may in the end consume us all. And I believe that the Chinese leader in San Francisco this week showed the kind of poise and sagacity that renders him more than capable of stepping up to the mark. He arrived for the APEC conference, San Francisco 2023, if you'll forgive me, like a visiting king, regal, poised, sophisticated, calm, collected, and my goodness, his interlocutor stooped to the occasion. Joe Biden turned left when he should have turned right, stood up when he should have sat down, left when he should have stayed, stayed when he should have left, looked like a demented old fool, jumped up out of his seat unannounced and went staggering round to Xi Jinping and started talking to him in English with no translator present. I tell you, this man is unhinged and he's in charge of your world, my world. It's the Chinese tradition to be, well, more than generous in their respect of elderly people. But it was tough with Joe Biden, who looked for all the world like Chance the Gardener in Peter Sellers' last and greatest film, Being There. That was Joe Biden, just being there. The icing on the cake has to be the describing of his guest in his presence as a dictator after having struggled at great expense and effort to try and repair his relations with China. in their interest, the interests of the American plutocrats who were queuing up to meet Xi Jinping. The interest of the world that requires not another global war over Taiwan. The interests of the ASEAN region filled with American allies who would be the first casualties of the conflict between America and China going hot, going nuclear. After having done all that, Joe Biden described the Chinese president as a dictator in his presence. And they imagine that anything will ever be the same again. The Russian economy is booming. It's official. Russia has turned in an $87 billion budget surplus. Its economy is booming. Local industries have taken over the markets, even the premises, sometimes with a little artistic shift, even the logos of the Western countries that marched out of Russia under Joe Biden's orders a year and a half ago. The Russian economy is booming. The Western economy is sinking. In Britain, everybody here from Britain and this audience knows exactly what I'm talking about. Britain is about to become a freezing hellhole of poverty, of unemployment, of social, cultural, religious, and political strife. We have a government of Rishi Sunaks and Suella Bravermans and all the other motley crew. My goodness, aren't they the answer to the identitarian politicians? If only we had more black people in office. If only we had more women in office. We've got a cabinet chock full of black and Asian people, many of them women, and it is the worst, most incompetent, most venal cabinet that I can remember in my long political life. But in Germany, you would not believe the state of affairs in Germany. I've got a couple of videos to show you that I hope help to bring what's happening in Germany under your attention. You know, you go to prison for saying stop the genocide in Germany today. You know that having a Palestinian flag on a demonstration is a crime in Germany. And here's the pièce de résistance. If the Germans who invaded France 3 times in 70 years will forgive my French, new citizens in Germany will have to sign an oath of allegiance to the Reich. Not the German Reich, the Israeli Reich. Correct me if I'm wrong, but no other country in the entire history of the world has required its citizens to pledge their allegiance not to their own country, but to another country somewhere else. We went past the Red House, the town hall in Berlin, capital of Germany, just the other day. What we found there was an eye-opener. But I've gone on too long. We've got great guests lined up for you tonight. It is the mother of all talk shows.